You're listening to a Nerds podcast. All things nerds, music, horror movies, pro wrestling, video games, anything nerds would like.
Once again, back with another Nerds podcast. Today we have an awesome performer in here. Make sure I get your name right. Billy Tipton. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. How are you, Cordell?
Doing pretty good. This podcast is called Nerds Podcast. It's basically all things nerds. You know, music, movies, cartoons, professional wrestling, video games, anything nerds would like. It's basically everything the nerds will basically vacate to. So, thank you again for doing this. I'm glad. I really appreciate you taking time out of your schedule just to let me ask you questions. I want to know off the bat that I am very grateful.
I'm happy to be on here.
Cool. All right. Now, were you a fan of professional wrestling as a kid?
Yeah, growing up, where I'm from, WCW was king. I mean, in the South, they were a bit more popular.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up, my family was a WCW family, and even if we didn't catch stuff live or we didn't catch the pay-per-views, I remember we'd go to the video store and get the compilation videos and the pay-per-view videos and the brand those, and it was a thing with my dad, my siblings. When WCW went under, my family kind of, for the most part, got away from being a wrestling fan, with the exception of my papa, but I ended up getting back to it in high school.
Mm-hmm.
That's ultimately kind of what led me to where I am.
Okay. Now, you said you get compilation tapes. When you were a kid, who was the wrestlers in WCW you liked to watch?
So, when I was a kid, I remember I absolutely adored hating Chris Jericho, but my favorite above everybody else was, without a doubt, Sting.
Okay. I'm assuming this was the Crows thing, right? Or is the Mohawks thing, the Surfer thing?
Oh no, it was Crow Sting. That's where I came in. I was a little too young for Surfer Sting.
Yeah.
But I will say I've grown to appreciate him just watching back old stuff since then.
Okay, that's cool though. No, that's pretty cool. Now, when you were in high school, were you an athlete? Do you take any sports or anything like that?
Yeah, I played soccer. I swam. That was pretty much all I did sports-wise in high school. There wasn't a amateur wrestling team. Otherwise, I probably would have given that a try. But
okay,
did that through most of high school, and then the last year I took off so I could do some musical, actually.
Okay. So you say you play music?
No, I was in a musical.
Oh,
I've been playing an instrument since high school. I realized a long time ago that I'm a lot happier as a fan of music than trying to participate.
There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not music inclined either, so don't feel bad. I mean, but if you get something out of it, it's cool. Now, when you started training, who did you train under? What school did you train under when you started training?
So I trained at Jacobs Pritchard Wrestling Academy in Knoxville, Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
It's a joint venture by Mayor Glenn Jacobs, also known as Kane, and Dr. Tom Pritchard.
That is
Dr.
awesome.
Tom's obviously the head trainer, so incredibly blessed to have him nearby and to have been able to train with him.
That is amazing. That is the coolest thing I ever heard. I thought I was reading it wrong. I wasn't sure if I was reading it or not. I was like, I know that sounds familiar, but I wasn't sure if that was a person who it was. That's why I asked him. I'm glad I asked. But now, like, when you started training and you started getting on the ring, how did it feel to take your first bump?
Well, so I'm going to be honest, and this is mildly embarrassing maybe, but before my first day of wrestling school, I thought the ring, I didn't think it had a pad on it. I thought it was just boards with canvas. I was fully prepared to go up there and bump on it. I showed up and I pushed on it. I was like, oh, this isn't going to be as bad as I thought. And to prepare, I'd taken some judo classes for a little while.
Okay.
And so I had a general idea of how to break falls and stuff like that. But I gotta say, I don't know if it's just Doc's ring or if it's just bigger rings in general. But that thing, to date, there ring I trained on is the stiffest ring I've worked in. And so it wasn't pleasant, but you just kind of get used to it. You power through it.
I think it helped you, the fact you took judo, or I think jiu-jitsu also helps as well, because you can learn how to brace. You knew. I think it helped you out a lot. That did help you out a lot, though. That's pretty cool, though.
I mean, any martial art in general, like having that as a background before you get in wrestling, just the body awareness and control is going to help. But the things that, I mean, I don't know, I personally, judo was just a lot of fun, but it did definitely help with pumping.
That's cool, though. I mean, that's effective. Now, I tried it one time a long time ago when I was in my younger years, and it was a school not too far where I lived, and I got on the mat, and this is the first time I was actually smart enough to anything. So the guy said, "Take your first bump," and I'd never heard that phrase before, and I hit that mat, and when I hit that mat, I knew I was never going to be able to do this because everything hurt like hell.
Like I said, man, I mean, it sucks when you first start out, but you get used to it. You do it enough times, you don't really think about it. I mean, there is, for me, still, and I'm not super experienced by any means. I'm still fairly new to this business. Been blessed to have worked as much as I have, but there's still, like, that first bump in match just always seems to hurt worse than everything after it.
Okay. So, what profession? Because and sometimes I feel bad just to ask up front. What profession, what promotion you working under now? If you have a promotion.
So it really depends. I mean, on the indies, it's kind of just you get in where you can fit in. But I've been really fortunate. This past weekend, I just finished doing a run with Real Pro Wrestling, and we did a show in Ave Maria, Florida, and Platinum Pro Wrestling we did a fair show down in Naples. But most consistently, I've been really fortunate to get on up at IWA Mid-South, and they run Jeffersonville, Indiana, fairly often. There's a lot of history there. And then smaller promotion I work for pretty regularly is Resolute Wrestling in Crossville, Tennessee. Okay. Outside of that, I kind of think upcoming shows. I will be doing some stuff with KFW or Crossfire Wrestling in Sevierville, Tennessee, and they always put on a great show. But ultimately, I mean, I'm open to take bookings wherever. I just love wrestling, man.
That's cool, though. That's all that matters. I think that's all that matters as long as you have a love for the business. I think that probably will take you further. Now, how many years have you been wrestling so far?
I am approximately 8 months in. I don't really count training. I kind of count my graduate at school, but and I've had just 60 matches.
That's cool, though. I mean, you got to start somewhere. I mean, that's pretty cool. Because most people I talk on here, I mean, very few of them are, like, seasoned veterans. Everyone's new. And, I'm always lucky, always grateful to anyone, if any time when they're on the mat or, whatever experience they have, they still have way more experience than I do. So I'm never going to say anything. I'm always grateful. And I think it's amazing that, anyone who's brave enough to get on that mat, because it's not easy.
I mean, you're not wrong. It definitely takes a toll on you, depending on how frequently you're working. But the flip side to that is, though, the more often you're wrestling, the better you get faster. That's
true. Now, when you started, other than bumps, did you have any interaction with Tom or Glenn? Did you ever have any trainers? Do you have any interaction to see how they would train you personally, or they ever tell you anything?
So my class was going on, and we followed appropriate guidelines, but my class was going on when COVID was still a lot more. It was treated a lot more seriously. Yeah. And so Glenn was busy doing mayor stuff, man. He stopped by a couple times, and I mean, he can offer some great advice and stuff like that, but ultimately, I mean, it's a pandemic, so we get most of our training from Dr. Tom.
Okay.
And let me tell you, man, it's impossible to describe accurately and do it justice, but you hear so many people say that he is one of the greatest, if not the greatest wrestling trainer of all time.
That's what I heard.
Training with him, you get it. You spend enough time with him, you understand it. He drills you on stuff, and he will tear you apart when he needs to tear you apart. And then ultimately, what ends up happening is you have, at least for me, this Dr. Tom yelling voice in the back of your head, where if there's a gap and you don't know what to do, that kind of guides you. And I mean, between that and the muscle memory, he is such a valuable resource, and really,
that's pretty cool.
Anybody who says something positive about him, they're probably underselling it.
Yeah, but he's trained a lot of people. He's trained a lot of people. I mean, people in WWF. I mean, a lot of people owe a lot of their career to Dr. Tom Pritchard, and I mean, he's a phenomenal trainer. And I've always heard about him. I mean, he was in charge of getting the people. I think that Kurt Angle and Mark Henry. I think Edge and Christian went under him. I think Steve Blackman was under him. I can name a whole lot of people. I mean, in that Attitude Era of people who moved up in the Attitude Era.
Beyond that, you've also got just because of all the training he did down at SCW, pretty much everybody that's top guy on the roster now. Yeah. He touched on in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's not uncommon that I'll show up at a show and somebody that I've watched on TV, somebody that a big name that I look up to, he'll ask, or they'll ask, "Hey, who trained you?" And they find out it's Dr. Tom. They're not to meet the changes, and they're just talking about how great of a trainer he is. I mean, the proof is in the results. I mean, not everybody. It is obviously on whoever's being trained to take it seriously and to really take those lessons to heart. But I mean, you can't set yourself up for success any better than by seeking him out.
Okay, that's pretty cool. Now, how would you rate your promos if you would rate them? How would you rate them from 1 to 10? Your promos right now.
1 to 10. So I think it depends. I mean, if I'm in and if I'm on, I'm having a day where I'm just killing it.
Mm-hmm.
I think I can probably pull an 8.
Okay.
But I think I'd average probably around a 6.
Still good. Still a pretty good number though.
I mean, really, it's just I need to do it more often, and everybody really should be just practicing as often as possible. But it's a lot of fun, man.
Yeah. Do you just do them off the top of your head, or do they give you a paper to read or something like that to memorize? How does that work for y'all?
On the indies, you'll almost never have a scripted promo. Somebody may say, "Hey, try to hit this point, try to take it in this direction," but it's ultimately on the talent to figure it out. And I mean, for the most part, sometimes I'll say I'll have an idea of where I want to go with something, but largely it's just kind of shooting from the hip.
Okay, that's pretty cool. Now, I don't know if you're a babyface or a heel most of the time, but I'm just going to ask you, do you prefer being a babyface more or a heel more if you had a choice? I'm sure you do have a choice.
So, I mean, I typically work babyface.
Mm-hmm.
Most places I work. A lot of that's just I'm not an easy guy to hate. Or at least that's what people tell me. But
yeah,
I have had some experience working heel, and that it's fun in a different way. But I think it's important to practice both so that you can have a better understanding, if you are primarily one, of how the other functions, so that you can do your job better.
That's cool. Yeah. Now, and I kind of halfway know how the bigger companies, they do storylines, because it's all been leaked. A lot of storylines have been leaked, but in indie promotions, do y'all follow storylines or anything like that?
Really, just depends on the promotion. A lot of of the time, whenever you're coming in from out of town, somebody's bringing you in, unless they've already decided, hey, we're bringing you in for a run, then you're there just to kind of make their guys seem bigger than they are.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's a promotion that you're at regularly, then yeah, you may get a storyline, and there's varying results on that. Some indie bookers are great at it, others not so much. But I mean, the stories are really, in my opinion, they're what make wrestling great.
Yeah,
I enjoy the athleticism and the matches themselves, but between the actual storyline and the story told in the matches, that's what keeps you coming back.
Almost definitely, yeah. Now, like, since you're like a fan, and you as a kid, and I don't say like really little, but like young, old enough to where you can actually, retain, actual storylines. Did you ever, as a kid, look at a storyline that you remember now and think that was an awesome storyline? And you can say any promotion outside. If I know you watch WCW, but you can add other ones too if you wanted to.
I mean, as far as things I remember from being a kid, I really don't remember a whole lot of the storylines too directly.
Yeah.
Because I was so young when WCW was going.
Yeah.
The storyline that pulled me back into being a fan in high school was when Zack Ryder was really coming to fruition and coming into his own and really making a name for himself and kind of just fighting the company by becoming so popular.
Yeah.
And I mean that entire story was one of the ones that got me back into it. But now there are so many that I look back on through my current viewpoint, and I realize that they're just magic.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the last storyline that I really fanboyed over before I became a wrestler was the long-term storyline between Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa in NXT.
Okay.
I'm obviously the ending was a little disappointing because of the injury that kind of stopped them from following through on it. But the story itself played out over such a long period of time. There was just so much commitment to telling it on everybody's part, and there's something magic about it.
That's pretty cool. I like that. Now, I'm assuming did you remember the NWO as a kid? Did you ever remember that?
Of course, I remember the NWO. You can't not.
No.
I just couldn't remember a whole lot of the specific storylines. I mean, the general gist of it, yeah.
Oh yeah.
If you ask for specific details,
I wouldn't.
Not so much.
I wouldn't expect you to do that anyway, because when I was a kid, like I'm clearly older than you. When I was a kid, the storylines I kind of halfway remember. I remember when the Four Horsemen turned on Sting back in the day when he had the crew cut, and for some weird reason, looking back, it doesn't make any sense why Sting would even join the Four Horsemen. That didn't make any sense. But it was like when Tully Blanchard was when J.J. Dillon was the manager, and I think Ole Anderson was like, I don't know what he was. It was like 5 or 6 people. And they were like, we're trying to save you, Sting. We're trying to warn you. And they jumped and beat the crap out of him. But that storyline, even awesome it was, it never made any sense why he would have joined them. I never understood that as an adult. As a kid, I didn't even register what was going on. I thought it was just cool when he had to fight them off.
I mean, sometimes the setup isn't everything. Sometimes you got to take that leap of faith because the middle part and the follow through on the story will make it worth it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, this might register you. I mean, because you were young enough to well, I don't think Undertaker never broke character, so it still register you. Did you think it was weird when Undertaker actually started talking in interviews as a regular dude? Did that weird you out?
I mean, not so much. I think ultimately a character that doesn't speak, it can be done so well for so long. There is still only so far you can take it without being able to talk.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time that he started doing that, he was already such a legend in the industry that there's no way it really impacted anybody's view of it, and he still has the same mystique that
Oh yeah.
that intro hits, and I mean it's chills. I mean, there's not. I've been fortunate enough to be in the same room as him once, and you can feel that he's there even if you're not looking at him. It's really weird. He's got an air about him. He's also like incredibly tall, but still like there's this air about him that he's got that's it's hard to describe.
I can see it. He's the last, I would say the last of the kayfabe era of people where when he was in like some interview with some pastor or something like that, and that just blew my mind. You know, like he's not like he's not using his regular voice, but I never saw him outside of just being an Undertaker. And then when he interviewed with Steve Austin, I'm like, it was awesome. This is the greatest thing ever, but it was just jarring because I never saw him outside the character.
I get that. I mean, there are still some guys that are really committed to it nowadays.
Oh yeah.
You'll see MJF's a good example.
He's good.
Him break.
He's good. He's one of the people that I think is almost like he's from a different era of wrestling. Like he would have been perfect in the era in the like late 70s, early 80s era of wrestling where, you know, he might have to fight somebody. You know, people, they know he's in character and they play and it's playing along. But like back in the early 80s and like, you know what? I'll even say, no, screw that. I'll say back into the early 90s, that people would literally get out of their chair and try to swing at wrestlers.
Yeah, I mean, Jake the Snake got stabbed by an old lady on his way to the ring once. So yeah.
It happens.
In a way, I mean, you can't put the genie back in the bottle.
No, not at this point.
I will say, like, it was just a different time.
It was.
I mean, the wrestlers back then were a different kind of people, and
they were.
That's not to say that they were particularly better or worse. They're just the business has changed so much. There are certain aspects of it that I envy the fact that those guys are getting work 6-7 times a week.
Oh yeah,
nonstop. I mean, that was incredible. I can't even. I stay busier than most people at my level, and
that's cool. You
and even then, I can't get close to that.
Yeah, but I think that you're right. It's a different. That was coming out of the. I mean, it was kayfabe up until I don't even know what year it was. Even, and this is how crazy it is. Who was it? Paul Orndorff one time. He literally stood in the ring. He said, "I'll get you to boo me and cheer me in the same minute," and that's what he did. He insulted him, and then he praised him in the same minute, and he told him he was going to do that. That's how great kayfabe is.
So in the roots of wrestling, go back to the carnivals. There's so much of wrestling is crowd manipulation, and being good at that is something that never really goes out of style.
It doesn't.
There's a million different ways to approach it, but once you figure out how you can do it, it's pretty fun.
It is, and like, you know, a lot of people have used that. You know, famously, you know, Muhammad Ali was a big fan of Gorgeous George, and he used his tactics in you know, in interviews in the ring and stuff. And if you look back, technically, even though he was a revolutionary person, he was technically a heel. If you want to break it down, he was really a heel. They just didn't see it as that.
You see a lot of the biggest names in MMA today, they act like wrestling heels.
Oh yeah.
I mean, they're telling stories a lot of the same way.
Yeah.
Now, granted, I mean, that's a shoot, but still
wrestling oriented.
The way that they're getting the crowd invested. I think really with Chael Sonnen moving on to obviously McGregor.
Oh yeah. Perfect
heel.
heel.
And there's all sorts of guys that are doing that, and they're willing to whip people into a frenzy, and it makes money. Oh
yeah, definitely. They're smart. Do you ever see it was Do you ever see the match with Tito Ortiz and what's his name? Alberto Del Rio. Do you ever see that match? It didn't last very long.
I have not.
Go on YouTube and look it up. Look up Alberto Del Rio and what's his name? And it's the most weirdest thing in the world because for a minute I didn't know if it's going to be a real fight or it's a shoot fight or it's whatever. And then like I think Alberto or someone owned like a AAA kind of like promotion, and there was a promoter there who looked like he sounded like Donald Trump, but he was a Mexican dude, and I was still this day I don't know if he was doing an impersonation or if that's what he sounded like. It was the most weirdest thing in the world. But if you watch the fight, Bill Del Rio can throw the hands. Don't get me wrong, he was a good fighter, but he couldn't contend against even though a seasoned older like Tito Ortiz. He's still a better fighter, but I think Wisnick would hold his own. He lasted as best he could, but if you watch, you like, dang. Wisnick got a little skill on him. I'm not going to diss him.
Well, a lot of the older wrestlers, when they came into the business, they were just stretched as a means of trying to see, who really wants this, and they either got really good at getting beat up, or they figured out how to actually really fight. And I've met Les Thatcher a handful of times, and I'm sure that man could still fold me to a pretzel if he was so inclined.
Probably could. I mean, Danny Hodge was a dude that would talk about in Infinity all the time. I just liked him because Jim Ross would talk about him. But they showed a video of an older Danny Hodge, and he was in a hardware store, and he's like breaking up, pliers with his hands. I'm like, God knows what a young Danny Hodge would have done to you. If he can do that at 80, a 20-year-old Danny Hodge would probably not snatch your nuts out.
Yeah, I still think one of my favorite wrestling stories is the one that Dr. Death Steve Williams was at a bar, and these guys had been harassing him, and he finally got them to where they were going to leave, and I don't remember actually if he was harassing them or they were harassing him, but either way, he was a terrifying individual. And
oh, yes.
They all load up in this Ford Bronco, and they're trying to leave the parking lot, and he stands in front of them and starts banging on the hood and says, run me over, and they just back up and run away the other direction. There he is on foot staring down a Ford Bronco.
I know, that's insane. That was a bad dude. That was a bad dude. So was Ming, who, for the longest time, I didn't know how straight of a killer was. I mean, that was The Rock's cousin or uncle or whatever. I don't know who he was. He's related somehow. He told a story one time, and you can probably find it on Jimmy Kimmel or something, because he told it there. He told one time that Ming was at a dinner, eating dinner, and some guy kept messing with him. And Ming, without missing a beat, he stood up and he bit his nose off and spit it on the floor and went back to eating.
Sometimes you just gotta assert your dominance, I guess, if you're in that time.
Yeah,
I don't know, man. I try to keep to myself. I try to maintain a fair profile when I'm not working.
Oh yeah, but I think, and it goes back to you said with a different time, because back then, especially for heels, I would say back in the early '80s, late '70s, maybe early '70s too, if you were a heel, you were the alpha male in there. And the thing was, especially with Bill Watts in Mid-South Wrestling, his territory, he said if you're in a bar and you get beat up, you're fired. Because in his mind, he feels that if you get beat up in a bar, no one's going to believe you're tough in the ring. So it's best to either not be in that bar in that situation or handle your own and have to suffer the consequences if you lose. And a lot of people got snatched up in bars probably back then, because this is the straight up killers. But it was a different time, though. It's not. We have TMZ. We have videos. We have people who can sue you. There's no way you can get away with stuff like that now.
Yeah, I mean, with this day and age and the way things are in the world, you couldn't get away with that. Plus, ultimately, there's just the whole concept of exactly what a tough guy is has kind of changed over the years, because the rise of MMA in general.
Yes. Get snatched up.
You might be a big, tough son of a bitch, but if you encounter the wrong guy that's maybe a little smaller than you but has been training for 10, 15 years and
meet the right one.
jiu-jitsu or the right Muay Thai or whatever,
Meet the right
you're
one.
going to get laid out. You're going to get twisted up. You're going to lose.
Yep.
And you're going to be embarrassed.
Yep. Meet the right one. Because all MMA fighters, they're not all MFAs are not big dudes. They're not muscular dudes. They don't have like 8-packs. They're not jacked up to the gills. But they're strong in a way that you don't notice, you don't realize it. I mean, there's some people who are very muscular, but I'm saying for the most part, like even look at boxers. There's a lot of boxers that are not muscular, they're in shape. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying they're skinny or scrawny or what. I'm just saying they're misleadingly strong. You don't know. You don't know how strong they are. It's misleading. You think someone who's like built like a matchstick, well, guess what? He hits like a tank.
I mean, ultimately, though, like if you're talking shoot fighting, the guys that really need to be intimidated by the grapplers. The striker, you can just, if he's on his feet, you can run away. Somebody snatches you, smothers you on the ground. There's not much you can do.
Yeah, take that beating. But no, I like
pretty much.
Yeah, but I like that. Now, back to like, what would you like to achieve and I'm asking this because it's too soon to ask, but I'm just gonna ask the question anyway. Like, where would you like to achieve in your future of training and stuff? What would you like to achieve?
I mean, if you're talking about like training,
just training.
I think I want the same thing everybody else does, and I eventually want to get good enough that I'm one of the best to ever do it.
Yeah.
Am I anywhere near that? Not even remotely. I do not suffer under the delusion that I'm anything other than decent for where I'm at.
Okay, that's
but
good.
I understand that it's a process, and it takes time, and it takes experience, and I've gotten immensely comfortable with it relative to where I was, 6 months ago. And that's, if I can keep making improvements like that, I think I'm on the right track.
That's cool, though. That's all right, though. Now, I have I always like to do the fantasy question, and this is more fun now. I've been doing it lately, and it's more fun. I still enjoy doing it. Now, I got 2 questions to ask you. The first question is going to be like, let's say, whatever imaginary promotion, the promotion doesn't matter. Say it's WW whatever, XF whatever, and you have a stable, and the stable you get 4 people, and you're the 5th one. You're the ring general. You get 4 people, and I'm gonna give you 4 people, living or dead. Doesn't matter. Wherever you would like to see in that juggernaut. Doesn't matter. You only got to be big name people I know. It can be people you know. But you get 4 people in your stable. Who would you choose?
Oh, this is tough. That's tricky because I mean you got to think about, all right, what's your goal? If your goal is to be dominant, well, give me 4 Hogan. But if your goal is to entertain, I'm trying to think of.
How about a little bit of both?
You know what? I'm just going to try to put together some of the best.
Okay.
Some of the best wrestlers imaginable. I mean, they're all super entertaining in their own way, but
yeah.
We'll just go with 4 of my favorites.
Okay.
So for one, I'm going to say Brad Armstrong.
Okay. Cool.
Very arguably one of the greatest baby faces of all time.
Underrated.
Wildly underappreciated in his time. We'll go with him.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Who else I want to throw in there? I'm going to limit myself. I'm going to pick people who have never been a world champion in either WCW or WWE.
Okay.
So we'll go with Mr. Perfect.
That's perfect too. I like that. Brad Armstrong is awesome team right there already.
Brad Armstrong, Mr. Perfect. His career was cut short, but I would have loved to have seen where he could have gotten if he hadn't gotten injured. So I'm going to say Dynamite Kid.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You got a beast team already.
And then, you know what? We're going to throw a big guy in there. I would say he actually, among people who know wrestling, gets what he deserves. But if the variation of what I've seen him do, if I'm building a stable to entertain myself and anybody else out there, the last one I'm going to put is going to be Bruiser Brody.
That would be cool.
It's going to be a really weird stable, and at some point Bruiser's going to throw Dynamite Kid at somebody. But otherwise, I mean, I think it'd be effective.
Yeah, you're the ring general, so it doesn't make any difference. You can call him, and he can wreck house all the way through. So, I mean, you have the right team.
I'm just going to kind of point him in the right direction. In that case, I ain't ever going to attempt to tell Bruiser Brody what to do. I'm not dumb.
Well, no.
But I get what you mean.
Yeah. Yeah, it's cool, though. I like that. That's a cool team. That's a perfect team. And, like, Brad Armstrong is a very underrated wrestler. He's a very underrated person. And I would love to saw Dynamite Kid in his prime, because when I saw him, I think it was past his prime. I think he was already hurt. He was pretty much going out, so that really sucked. And Mr. Perfect is a person who should have been WWE champion or WWF or whatever, but I don't think they saw him as they had too many big dudes. I think if Mr. Perfect was here now, and well, pre-COVID or whatever, I think he would have been a heavyweight champion. I think him, and I'm gonna say this one to you, even though he didn't say him, I'm gonna say he could have been heavyweight champion. I think Rick Rude could have been heavyweight champion. Now, if they were existing now, they would have been. But that's perfect, though.
And I mean, I think that's also kind of indicative of how the business has changed, where they're willing to give dudes a shot, and they're willing to say, all right, we're going to throw the belt on them, see how it plays out, see if they capitalize. And some people you'll see really take advantage of it, and others peter out.
Yeah, I know. And they weren't small dudes. That's the funny thing about it. It wasn't like Mr. Perfect was small, because like Hogan's like 6'7". So Mr. Perfect was probably up to his shoulder. So at least anything, Mr. Perfect at least 6 foot. And so was like, I think
he's probably somewhere between 6'2", if I guess. I don't know what you feel that, but
yeah, but he's not. He's a big dude. He's just not a big dude compared to the giant dudes that stand next to him. That's something I forget that when I'm looking at someone like that. Dude's a lot bigger than I thought. I saw Sting in real life one time. I said, man, that dude's a lot bigger. I don't know why I thought he was a little dude. There's no logic to make me think he was small. But he always stood against, Kevin Nash or, Scott Hall or someone who was much taller. So I just assumed he was, 5'5" or 5'8" or something like that. That's a much bigger dude than I thought he was.
Oh, no, yeah. I mean, I remember as a kid, I never really thought Scott Hall was that big. But I think it's because he was always next to Kevin Nash. And Kevin Nash is enormous.
Yeah, exactly.
And so you lose sight of the fact that Scott Hall 6'6" or something like that.
Yeah.
It's really easy to forget that, but he was a giant.
Yes. We forget that. Because sometimes, you just see, if you see Hogan against someone else, you forget Hogan's a giant dude. Hogan's 6'7". Hogan's basically the size of a power forward in basketball. And and you just don't think about it. You're just so used to seeing that tall dude. But some people be standing next to him and dude must be very big. And then you stand oh my God, that dude is 6'7". Of course he's 6'7". So is Hogan. What are you thinking? But I don't put it together, because if you see a dude who's standing someone who's 6'8", and the guy's 6'1", you just assume the dude who's 6'1" is 5'5" or something. But he's a lot bigger.
I mean, another great example of that's Randy Orton.
Yes.
Because he's so well proportioned, it's impossible to really tell from a distance unless you have the right person next to him to realize that he's I think 6'6".
Mm-hmm.
Maybe 6'4" at least.
Yeah.
He's another guy. He's a giant.
Yeah. He's athletic out of his ass, crazy athletic. The one move is so perfect that everyone Mr. Perfect to me is he's the one who does it perfectly. Everyone can do it. I mean, everyone can do it, but I've seen people do it just as good as Mr. Perfect. But the standing drop kick will always be the Mr. Perfect's move. That's the most beautiful. When I see people do that, it looks amazing when people do a standing drop kick. Because they can't.
I mean, you hear, if you listen to people working with Mr. Perfect, apparently he was just, everything looked like it needed to look. Everything looked as painful as it needed to look.
Yeah.
But when you actually went in there and wrestled him, the supposedly he was light as a feather.
Oh yeah, he was like that.
I mean, it's.
Mm-hmm.
There's a strong argument that from a technical standpoint that he's one of the best.
I would agree he is.
Technicians of all time.
I would agree with that.
I mean,
I would say that.
There's a lot of people in that conversation as well. I mean, obviously you got to throw Dean Malenko, Bret Hart, etc. But like,
he's up there.
Really, yeah.
A lot of times sometimes that's the thing about with big guys when they wrestle against each other, it looks really boring and it doesn't. I mean, there's some people who are big dudes who are very agile, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying they're garbage wrestlers. I'm saying when you watch two big dudes, it at some point it gets really boring. But when you see a big guy throw around a little guy and he's doing all kinds of flips and stuff, and you'll be thinking, man, that big dude's strong as hell. No, he's not. He's not doing anything to him. The guy's selling so good, it makes the big guy even stronger than he already is. And that dynamic works.
Of strength you have to have. I mean, it's still. I mean, it ain't ballet. There's still some level of force that has to be exerted. But
yeah.
I can definitely get what you mean.
It's amazing when we see him. That's why I like to watch when Brock Lesnar would wrestle when he wrestled against AJ Styles or he wrestled against like Daniel Bryan. It looked like it mattered. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not against Braun Strowman, and I think he's very agile. He's a big dude. He's very agile. But when they cartoonly made him so big and powerful, and he was knocking over skyscrapers and stuff, when Wisdom hit with the F5, it just like it didn't matter. Okay, we get it. Is this the cheat code or something? Because I don't care at this point. But when he wrestled against AJ Styles, it mattered because it's like the David and Goliath story that you can stand behind. That never gets old.
Yeah. Speaking of which, I think, just throwing this out there, I think my favorite Brock Lesnar match is probably when he wrestled Finn Balor at Royal Rumble. I believe it was 2019.
I think so. I'm going to say yeah. I don't remember. I'm going to say yeah.
Yeah, that match was something else. I mean, that's one of my absolute favorite Lesnar matches.
He is a phenomenon. Yeah, for someone who's like I think he was 232 or something like that. I don't know how much he weighs now, but for someone that big and this was a botched move, and he's probably done it before, and he probably shouldn't have done it then. You probably seen this before when he botched the move when he did. Yeah, if anyone else done it, they would have broke their neck. They would have been paralyzed.
Well, apparently he was doing it in OVW left and right. Like, that was really the first time he messed it up, but a lot of that had to do with I can't remember, was he wrestling Kurt Angle?
Yeah, it was, and the top rope was wet. It was sweaty. And
supposedly, Kurt was a little too far out, and Brock tried to push it too far out, and he didn't get enough of a rotation in, and that's kind of what did it. But, look, man, I almost killed myself attempting to shoot and start press once, so I get it. The fact that he did it as many times as he did before he messed up is a testament to how much of a super athlete that man is.
He is, and he has no neck either. I think that helped. The fact, because you think about it, any move with like it's like I don't know, I'm gonna say power bomb, but a shooting star press, if you come down your neck, that's 232 pounds on your neck coming down on top of you off the top rope. So if anyone who was to do a move like that, whatever how much you weight your body weight is, think about that on crushing your neck. And if anyone else had done that move and messed up, they might have been a paraplegic. They might have had to get him off the mat. They might have stopped that match though. But he was lucky enough that Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say that's why you see a lot of the Japanese dojos. They spend a lot of time strengthening those neck muscles and strengthening those traps and basically just making it so that everything around your neck is as dense as possible so that you don't die when things go wrong or even when things go right.
A smart idea. That's a smart idea. You don't need any accident. And it's very easy to get hurt. The most simplest things. And you've probably seen those on YouTube, and it's like a really messed up video. But it's some indie promotion somewhere, and the ring looked like it was made out of bed frames or something. And all this dude did was go on the second rope. That's all he did. He got on the second rope. He jumped down, and his legs went like Gumby. That's all he did. So I hope he had medical something. I hope he had some health insurance to help him out because it was not pretty. And that's all he did. He didn't do no backflip. He jumped off the second rope and his legs went badoop. And that's all it takes.
Oh, yeah, I think I've seen that.
It's horrible.
Pretty gruesome.
Yeah.
But like I said earlier, it ain't ballet. Unfortunately, that's a risk people take.
It is. I agree. It is. And like you probably, well, I'm saying you don't remember as a kid, but I'm saying you've seen it as an adult soon, like later. Remember when Sid Vicious and Scott Steiner was wrestling, and Sid Vicious told a story later that someone wanted him to jump off the top rope. I don't know why. It didn't make any sense. And he did, and when he landed, his leg, his ankle, whatever, it bent in a way that a leg shouldn't bend. And I think that basically stopped his career. He had to get pins in his legs. But they had to replay, and it was horrible. It's like, yeah, some people shouldn't be doing that. You're too big to be jumping off that top rope like that. Yeah, I would say even the Undertaker. Remember when the Undertaker, when the Dark Undertaker was doing, when he was jumping off the top, flying over the top rope like a luchador?
Yeah, I mean, the thing you gotta keep in mind is that nowadays, modern medicine has advanced to the point where things that would have been a career-ending injury before aren't. And you're able to recuperate, you're able to get back out there, and you're able to be just as good as you were before.
That's cool, though.
But a lot of those guys back then didn't have that benefit.
Not really. I mean, a lot of medical, they didn't have like backstage, like actual doctors at all. They just had like, makeshift, heal it right now and worry about it later. I mean, that's why a lot of people drank and did a lot of pills and stuff because you had to mask the pain somehow. I mean, it's hard to come out to do that every night. That's pretty cool. I mean, that's not pretty cool. But yeah. I got.
He just said drugs are pretty cool, so.
Yeah. Yeah. But like, go ahead.
No, I was just chuckling. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Don't worry about it. No. I was gonna say once again, I appreciate you being nice enough to take time out of your day to interview, and I really appreciate it. This was really fun. I really enjoyed this. And hopefully down the line, I get to interview again. Like, I want to see how, progress is going, everything, like to check up to see, where you're at, everything like that, give you props and everything like that. But, like, I got one more question, and, this question is basically the second fantasy question. And this question is, let's say if I'm a big promoter and I get you in and you're in the main event of whatever promotion is a big-time promotion. And I'm going to give you whoever you want to wrestle, living or dead. You get to pick whoever, and you get to pick whatever kind of match you want to pick, whatever. Who would you pick to wrestle you in your big main event match, and what kind of stipulations would you have in there?
Now, is this an example of, I want to check this off my career bucket list, or is this an example of just, because I mean, if it's just the indies, the number one person I want to wrestle at some point, and this is for personal reasons, but is Gregory Iron.
Okay.
But if you're including
everyone around the world, every fantasy, living or dead.
If you're talking major promotions, things like that.
I'm trying to make major promotions.
Oh,
you can pick anybody.
If you're talking major promotions, I've got to say Daniel Bryan, just because or you know what? Either or, Daniel Bryan or AJ Styles, just simply based off of how much I can learn from that match.
Okay.
And that's the thing, is like, wrestling these greats like that, you come away, when you wrestle someone so much better than you, come away with a different understanding of things, and you take away so much from it that it helps you grow. And I will throw this out there, like we were talking about earlier about how way back in the day, how wrestlers are getting to wrestle 6-7 times a week. Mm-hmm. They were also wrestling people who've been doing it 10 years at that same rate. Mm-hmm. And so they had these vets that were really guiding them. And a lot of the time on the indies nowadays, we'll see, the experienced guy in the locker room has been working 4 years. And he's had, a couple hundred matches.
Okay.
Well, I mean, back then, that's nothing.
Yeah.
But So I would say if I could wrestle anybody with any stipulation, and it's a main event, definitely I am going to say Daniel Bryan.
Okay.
I'm going to say Daniel Bryan, and as far as stipulation goes, I don't know. I mean, ultimately, I think you got to be careful with stipulations unless you got a story built up.
Okay.
It's important to use those when there's some kind of payoff. To just do it for no reason.
Okay, I'll give you a reason. All right. The stipulation is whatever the match, you get to pick the match, but the match is for the heavyweight championship belt, but you somehow got to pick the stipulation in the match. How about that?
Well, I mean, look, man, if we're talking actual winning logic, then you got to take that stipulation that Dolph Ziggler used a couple months ago, where he said, "It's no DQ for me, but you can be DQ."
Okay.
If you give someone the option to pick it, that's the smartest.
Yeah, that's true.
stipulation
Yeah,
can pick.
you're right. That makes sense. That makes sense.
However, just because I am baffled that it exists, and I'm down to do wacky stuff if it makes sense. If I'm just trying to inconvenience people, I'm going to pick a tuxedo cage match, similar to what Ted DiBiase did.
That's pretty cool. I like that.
Way back in the day.
That's a pretty cool match.
Yeah, just something weird. Get the people excited, but hopefully, ideally, like I said, if there's a story building, they did that. I think, if I remember correctly, they did that because they just kind of ran out of other stipulations. But outside of that, if it's just a straight match for the world title, then just a straight match for the world title. If I'm working somebody like Daniel Bryan, you don't even really need a fancy stipulation to be exciting.
I guess not really. Technically, no, not really.
Say what?
I guess technically you don't really need a stipulation. Technically, not really.
No, I mean if you get people that talented, I think the people will get a better story out of it, especially if it's fresh with no real storyline leading up to it.
Yeah.
If it's just a regular match.
Yeah.
Make it competitive, drag it out, make it take a while, but
yeah, it'll matter. Yeah, because you'll make it matter. So, especially with Daniel Bryan.
That being said, I definitely do enjoy a good no count out, no DQ match, but those are, like I said, you need a reason for that.
Okay, that's cool. I want to thank you again. And I really appreciate it. And hopefully, down the line, we'll get to talk again because this is really fun. And I really appreciate, you just taking the time out of your day to do this.
And like I said, man, I was happy to. I enjoy doing stuff like this.
It's awesome.
We'll definitely have to do it again sometime.
Almost definitely. All right. Well, you have a good day.
You too, man.
All right. See you.
Best of luck to you moving forward.
Thank you. You too. See you.
All right. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you again. This was a really awesome episode right here, and I want to make sure I get, Billy Tipton is the man's name, and I'm really grateful for him for allowing me to interview him. And, I don't have anything else to add to this, so I'll be signing out, and when I do, I'm going to sign out today with a zombie sound effect.